I'm Juliet Scott-Cropsford, and this is Women in Worth, a new podcast series from Worth Media.
Human rights are women's rights, and women's rights
For the record,
are human rights.
feminism, by definition, is the belief that men and women should have equal rights.
You told the world that time's up on violence. You told the world that time's up on silence.
Justice is not a concept we read about in a book. Justice is about how much ladies get paid.
They say it's a myth, but it's not a myth. It's math.
This is the best time to be a woman. I want young women to really understand that and believe it. It's not that there aren't barriers. Of course there are barriers.
Each season, we tackle the significant challenges women face in the workplace and society at large, in the hopes that doing so may chart a path forward to accelerate progress. This is season 1 of Women in Worth, Female Fortunes. She started her first company at the age of 24. 5 years and 1.5 million users later, she sold it for an incredible $375 million. Now, Alexa von Tobel, the founder of financial planning platform LearnVest, has set her sights on something new: venture capitalism.
We live for entrepreneurs who want to change the world and who have big, big, big ideas and want people who can help make it easier.
But helping others understand and plan for their financial futures is never far from Alexa's mission.
We're moving towards a freelance economy, a gig economy, but that also poses all sorts of questions, because who gives you your 401k if you're a gigger? And who forces you to save for a retirement if it's a part-time job? And so those things, I think, are the sort of big financial planning things that we think about.
We join Alexa today at her offices in New York to discuss her new book, Financially Forward, as well as investment strategies and digital tools for today's economy.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you, Alexa. So I want to start with how we think about money. It's not unusual to hear people expressing doubt or uncertainty when it comes to actually managing their wallets. Growing up, what did you know about money?
I mean, I think just like most of America, we grow up without any financial literacy or any financial education in our school systems. So I knew some of the basics that my parents had taught me. And I think what was most astounding for me was when I went to Harvard undergrad. I couldn't believe that I could graduate from there and still have zero idea on how many credit cards should I have, how much savings should I have, what can I afford in rent, what's a 401k. And that was like a big aha moment for me because, one, I was very financially minded. I was a good saver. But again, the fact that there I was going to work on Wall Street and had no idea what to do with my wallet, it was just obvious to me that this was a big issue.
And how did your parents influence your financial decision making?
Well, first I would say they, of course, influence everything in my life. My mom was always really frugal, which I, to this day, just admire so much. She always somehow made every dollar go farther. And I think she made a big point of not letting us just have everything that every other kid would have. There was this great story I always remember where I really wanted Keds, the white sneakers. And we could afford them, but my mom was just like, you're going to get the knockoff version called Peds or whatever the heck they were. That for me, I remember I was so angry. I was like, why can't I get them? And my mom was just like, because Alexa, we work really hard and we should spend it on things that are really important. And for her and my dad, that was being able to do things like go visit my grandparents who lived in Belgium and go see the world and, get different perspectives. It was not for me to have your coolest, highest end shoes.
You founded LearnVest in 2008, in the middle of the biggest financial crisis.
Yeah, I actually founded it May of 2007, and then I dropped out of Harvard Business School in December of 2008, actually at the bottom of the recession. I mean, when it was like, go hide under your mattress type days.
So why start a company then? Because that feels quite profound to me that it was in that year at that time.
I quickly realized that the idea for financial planning software made the most sense when the world was upside down. And I'd already started it a year and a half prior. I'd worked nights and weekends. I'd started putting my savings in. I think my biggest fear was actually the fear that I wouldn't go and do it and go and build it and that I would regret it forever. And so it was just like a moment of clarity. I found a way to take a 5-year leave of absence from HBS. And as the world was literally going under, and I had all my friends losing their jobs, I remember thinking to myself, this is exactly when America needs a really clear financial solution. And LearnBest in its nutshell, for those of you who've never heard it, think TurboTax meets financial planning. It was financial planning software. And I said, let's go build that for America.
That's incredible. And so how do you think the financial crisis reset people's relationship with financial institutions?
I mean, permanently. So you have to think about it for the youngest generations today, the way that, they think about their finances. For the people who were 6 to 14 during the crisis, their parents lost their jobs, their parents lost their homes, their parents, couldn't afford to pay rent. One thing that's worth just saying is the family foundation, this dates all the way back to Aristotle, but really like the family unit is an incredibly important pillar in our development as people and also as society. And the pillar of a family is that we can afford the roof over our head and food on the table. And if that is not strong, I worry passionately that America will not be strong. And I think that what you saw with 2008 was an entire generation that watched the tablecloth get pulled out from under their parents. And I think that scares people to their core. And I think it's raising a different generation. The unfortunate thing is they really distrust the financial institutions that allowed those things to happen. The institutions that overborrowed, the institutions that gave people mortgages that they knew that they couldn't afford, et cetera. And I think trust was really broken. And I think it creates an almost more complicated dynamic around our wallets, which is, you need to care, but you don't know who to trust. And as a result, you are somewhat paralyzed because you don't trust the original players that you heard of.
And how do you think that level of distrust with the financial institutions paid it forward to the success that you saw in your company?
I mean, I think one of the things that was really great about LearnBest is at the time we were building LearnBest, people were looking for a fresh, transparent institution. And again, what LearnBest did was incredibly transparent. We said, here's what we charge you to get a financial plan. There's nothing else. There's no buried fees. We're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I think what happened there is that you saw a lot of young people excited for transparency. And being a millennial who was starting a company, I just said, I want to build something that is transparent. And it started working. The brand started working. And in the end, we got acquired by Northwestern Mutual because we had built a platform that stood for trust and transparency. And Northwestern Mutual was an incredible brand that had been around for 161 years that believed in the same mission that we believed in at LearnBest, which is empowering families.
And recently you shifted your focus. So in January, it was announced that you're leaving Northwestern Mutual and LearnBest to start your own venture capital fund called Inspired Capital Partners.
Yep.
Why the move?
I'm young, or at least I like to think I'm still young. I'm 35. And
You're young.
I realized that one, in the same way that the technology ecosystem was built up here in New York, in many ways because of some of my friends and I working really hard to go build companies, I always felt that the best investors I had were the investors who had built and scaled companies themselves. And I said to myself, what if there was a firm that not only had people who were incredibly knowledgeable about building companies and scaling companies, but that also cared passionately about helping entrepreneurs grow and scale faster. And literally it came out of my mouth one day. I was like, it should really be like Inspired Capital. And then I said, is that name taken? Let's go get it. And I think what was really important for me in this next swing was I was spending all of my time, all of my energy in my free time and weekends mentoring and advising entrepreneurs because I live for the hustle of building companies. It's like an intellectual playground for me. And I said, I should probably do this full time. If I'm doing this for fun, that's when it was a sign for me that it was time for my next move.
That's amazing. And I've heard that Penny Pritzker, the former Secretary of Commerce under the Obama administration, which is obviously an incredibly well-known family as well, has joined Inspired Capital Partners as a founding partner. What are some of the challenges in the investing space that you two are looking to tackle?
Yeah, so I think we're looking at everything. So early stage technology, we're really excited about entrepreneurs who want to solve very, very big problems. We're looking at all sorts of categories around the way we will live, spend, work differently. I always say building a company is like climbing Kilimanjaro. You have to train, but you're best served if you have a guide who's just done it. And I think that entrepreneurship is not that much, it's not that different. It's an arduous task. You got to keep going. You got to keep fighting. You can't give up. And you're better served if you have people who can pick you up when you need to, get across a pass, and that we know how to pack, we know how to train, we know what you need to carry, we know who you need to ask. And so we live for entrepreneurs who want to change the world and who have big, big, big ideas and want people who can help make it easier.
Watch this space. We'll be right back. Let's take a moment to hear from Carrie Schwab-Pomerantz, President of Charles Schwab Foundation and Senior Vice President of Charles Schwab, official launch partner of the Women and Worth podcast.
When you're entering into retirement or you're thinking maybe 5 years away, it's a really good time to start taking a hard look at what you have. We recommend that individuals have approximately 25 times the amount of money they're going to need to withdraw the first year to cover their expenses.
Let's talk about your new book, Financially Forward. In it, you discuss how to use today's digital tools to best accomplish our goals. What trends do you see influencing our wealth and how we manage it today?
First of all, when it comes to our finances, I think we're entering the most interesting decade for financial technology, fintech, because technology is now finally getting to the place where you can do things seamlessly. We're moving towards a cashless society. A year ago, we were starting to see 24% of the country be cashless. It's now more like 36% of the country. So we're trending very quickly towards constantly doing everything digitally. I think we're trending towards a world where we can get access to better advice, better technology, better tools for more affordable prices. I think we're moving towards a world where you can actually see everything. You can get better visibility into the way your wallet works. I'm excited one day for a self-driving wallet because at the end of the day, your wallet is just math. On the inverse of all of that, we're going to see some big challenges around money, which is we are living longer than we ever have before. So if, my grandfather's life expectancy was supposed to be in the 70s, it's quickly trending towards the 90s and at some point, 100, 105. And what that really means is how on earth are you going to pay for that? Those are the kind of big problems that keep us up at night. I think the other thing is, we're moving towards a freelance economy, a gig economy. But that also poses all sorts of questions because who gives you your 401k if you're a gigger? And who forces you to save for a retirement if it's a part-time job? And so those things, I think, are the sort of big financial planning things that we think about. What's the future of insurance? What does insurance look like when you have data everywhere? So really fun, meaty questions that we love to think about. And we've got some tricks up our sleeves as well.
So I want to ask that same question, but viewed from the female perspective. How have the financial lives of women evolved?
So I think one of the things that I've always found to be really interesting is what's happening around women's wallets. So between 2000 and 2010, the average salary of a female had increased about 65%. Now, mind you, that's not because they got raises. It's because more and more women were entering the workforce because the concept of two working parents is, it's required. Additionally, 25% of the country is single moms. And one of the things I think that really matters is particular to women is we live on average about 6 years longer than men. So net, women need more money. And I think it's just, for me, I'm incredibly invigorated as I joke, I've often been like the poster child of working moms because I have 3 kids under the age of 4 and have always leaned in full tilt to my career. And I think we're just proving that we're going to see households work differently when you have 2 fully equal parents at the table.
And technology's changed the way we earn, spend, and save. What tools do we need to adjust our financial habits and plan for a meaningful life?
One of the things that I just absolutely love about the power of the internet is all of the ways that you can actually save time and save money. So I think one of the big transitions beyond just the wallet and saving is I think we've actually shifted to an entirely new paradigm where technology is actually empowering us to save time. I studied happiness when I was at Harvard, which sounded like a really fluffy thing. And my mom kept saying, "What are you studying?" But one of the things that we do know is that you can actually buy happiness. You can find time where you don't want to do something specific on a weekend. And that's actually the most valuable place outside of obviously saving and paying off your credit cards and all of those things, to find an extra hour or two on a weekend and buy yourself that time back to be able to take a break, focus, give yourself a minute.
Yeah.
And that is a more valuable way to spend than on goods and products. Another thing I'll just say is, we've really moved past, I always like to compare to my mom. I can do what my mom used to do 30 years ago on a Sunday. It would take her 5 hours to get all the groceries, unpack them all, put them all away, do any of the errands that were required for her family. I can actually do that leveraging technology in under 10 minutes on a Sunday night. And it's just incredibly powerful to think about all of the advantage that we have. I can actually not only save money, but by leveraging technology, I get to save time. And so I think we're trending towards a really new, interesting shift where we're putting time back in our pockets. And that, by the way, is a resource that is limited and you cannot get more of. And so I think it's incredibly powerful what we see there.
I read something interesting about your time at Harvard as an undergraduate student. You wrote a thesis on the development of Bhutan. If I remember correctly, Bhutan is well known for bucking the trend of measuring economic progress through GDP, instead using a happiness index. Could you elaborate on your thesis and whether it has helped inform your career ever since?
So first, I think just remembering that every action we take on this planet is us trying to be in search of things like meaning and joy and happiness. And so I think that that's a really good reminder that almost every action that we're taking in some way is trying to increase that. So it has always given me this very existential gear. I think that is really strong. That will remind me we should be doing the things that we care about. We should, because those ultimately bring more meaning. And yes, it has led me towards, I always joked that from that research, from all of that work, they took a bunch of 90-year-olds and asked them at the end of their lives what they would regret. And you never regret the things you do, you regret the things you don't. And I think that has been an incredibly, I would say, clarifying filter that I put my life through, where I always kind of look forward to 90-year-old Alexa who sits on my shoulder and I will say, am I going to regret if I don't do this? And if the answer is an obvious yes, then it is so simple. It's like, now just have the courage to make the hard call. And so I think that for me has just been a really powerful way to live life.
I love it. I'm going to have you on my shoulder every time I think about, am I going to regret this? Alexa, as we end our conversation, I want to ask, 25 years from now, what conversation will we be having about women's progress?
I always think about that sign of a grandmother who's got a sign up that says, it's 30 years later, do I still have to march for this shit? And it cracks me up because it's just such an amazing, you're like, come on. And I really do believe that we have crossed a line with the Women's March and with everything that we've seen where women will not let us go backwards. Hopefully in 25 years, when we think about women's issues, we're going to actually get to a place where it won't even just be equality for women, it will be equality for everybody. You can be any shape and size, any sexuality, any ethnicity, any gender, any orientation, and we are going to be in a position where we say, we support you equally. And I cannot imagine how special a world will be when we can do that.
And finally, what does worth mean to you?
There's this great quote that somebody once said to me, which is, if you figure out what you love and you figure out what you're good at and you can do both every day, do it. And I think for me, worth is more, it's not a money, it's not a quantity of money. It's really what do you love and are you good at it? And if you can do both, you will be the most successful person. And the hard part is being self-aware enough to know what you love and what you're good at. And if you get the benefit of doing those both together as soon as you can, whether that means 25, 30, 35, 40, do it sooner because you will be so much more successful in your career. Your time will be worthwhile. Your value, what you create from it, will be worthwhile. And for sure, you will be successful financially.
I couldn't agree with you more. And Alexa, you're an absolute inspiration. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I love this show.
That was Alexa von Tobel, the founder and managing director at Inspired Capital, as well as the author of a new book, Financially Forward. And that's it for this episode. Thank you for listening. Please rate and review Women and Worth, or better yet, subscribe on your favourite listening app. Join the Women and Worth community by subscribing to our newsletter on worth.com. Women and Worth is produced and edited by Karsha Brusalian, and a special thanks to Worth Senior Vice President of Strategy and Growth, Alicia Hamilton. This episode is supported by our official launch partner, Charles Schwab. For more investing advice, visit www.schwab.com.